Hey, Bastich B for 64K and welcome to another episode of Top 10s. On today's episode, I'm going to take a look at my personal favorite Sega Dreamcast Top 10 versus fighting games. Cue that intro.
Welcome to 64K, hosted by Bastich B.
And welcome back. Now when I think of the Sega Dreamcast, I think of two things. First up, what an underrated system, and it really didn't get the time it deserved. You know, it got cancelled early, especially in the US and Europe, and it had a much longer life in Japan. But it was way ahead of its time. It had online gaming before anything else. It did it excellently, even on a 56K modem. It was fantastic. Hours and hours of fun. I can't even explain the amount of awesomeness that system gave me when it was originally released. Now, the second thing I think of when I think of the Sega Dreamcast is fighting games. This system is ridiculously good for that. Now, the Sega Dreamcast, just like the Sega Saturn, was lucky enough to be blessed with having two of the biggest fighting game creators, Capcom and SNK, pumping out tons and tons of games for them. All their arcade conversions, original games, it was crazy. That's why these two systems, in my opinion, are the best formats for fighting games ever, and they still have yet to be beaten. You can debate which one's better. I'm not even going to do that. I think they're both freaking insanely good. You should own them both. During the Dreamcast's couple years of existence, it managed to obliterate the competition as far as fighting games. I mean, you had the aging old PS1, which was on its way out at this point. The games were starting to look a little bit dated, especially compared to the Dreamcast games. Excellent selection of fighting games also, but it just didn't compare when you were playing a Dreamcast game and you're playing an old PS1. And the N64 is a joke of a system if it comes to fighting games. It was a good system besides fighting, but for fighting it was absolutely pathetic. It probably has one of the worst selection of fighting games of all time. Maybe only eclipsed by the Atari Jaguar. Actually, maybe even the Atari Jaguar is better than that thing. Okay, a couple quick notes before we start this top 10 countdown. If you are going to get into Sega Dreamcast game collecting, or if you want to get into the Sega Dreamcast fighting game collecting, you are definitely want to get yourself a Japanese Dreamcast, just like my one here. You can buy them on eBay, they're fairly cheap. I would highly suggest it because the games, the US versions and even European versions of fighting games are pretty expensive and they're hard to find. So the Japanese ones are in abundance, they're easy to find. There are tons and tons of games that never got released in Europe and US for fighting games, so you're going to be restricted if you have a US machine or European machine. Japanese versions are way cheaper, they are all fighting games. Story is almost non-existent, so even if there's Japanese text, it's not really a hassle. Pretty much all these games I'm going to show you I have English menus, so you're not going to run into any real issues here. Story, you're not going to know what's going on. They are fighting games, it's irrelevant. For the most part, it's just one-on-one brawling. So final note, just like the Saturn selection, I'm only going to be going through one-on-one traditional versus fighting games. So games like Power Stone and Virtual On, you know, arena-based combat games, I'm not going to be including those. This is just strictly one-on-one versus. So on that note, let's get this list started. Is Techromancer, released in 2000 by Capcom, based on the 1998 arcade game. This game takes the form of a giant robot one-on-one mecha smackdown, with the story being a bunch of aliens invade Earth and a group of heroes with mechs band together to slap those cheeky bastards up.
Straight up, the presentation of this game is amazing, from the full anime intro to the way the story is told like an episode of one of your favorite cartoons. It's fantastic. The story mode is by far my favorite, and is the only game on this list that I'd highly suggest getting the English version for. Each of the main characters has their own unique stories, complete with branching paths and dialogue choices which affect the endings. The gameplay is big fun destruction at its best. Reminds me a bit of SNK's King of the Monsters series, as you fight, buildings are destroyed, and releasing all kinds of power-ups that sway the balance of the fight drastically. Massive power-up moves, excellent music, and a brilliant selection of mechs to choose from, which all vaguely resemble famous robots from shows like Mazinger, Macross, Ultraman, amongst many others. This is a hard to find and very expensive game, but it's well worth your effort if you've never played it before.
Number 9.
Is King of the Fighters Dream Match 1999, which is a massive remix of King of the Fighters 98 in the arcades, and was released on the Dreamcast in 1999. There were a lot of King of the Fighters games that came out for the Dreamcast, but this, for me, hits all the right buttons perfectly, and is the must-own one of the bunch. This remix adds a beautiful anime intro, really well implemented 3D backdrops, a massive roster of characters, 50 plus, and even Neo Geo Pocket support. The title Dream Match refers to the fact that you have every character that has appeared in one of these games up until that point, regardless of whether the character had died or not in the storyline. Big, nice, chunky sprites are animated really well, and it plays like a dream. Even newbies will find this game fighter friendly. You have the option of 1-on-1 versus or team-based games, and the soundtrack is rocking good. I even bought the soundtrack release. If you never got a chance to play this, then this is the King of the Fighters game you want to own on your Dreamcast.
Number 8.
Project Justice is another Capcom arcade game from 2000, and it was ported to the Dreamcast in 2001. This game is 100% Japanese in style, from the insane plot of rival high schoolers battling each other to the ridiculous over-the-top power moves. You know you're in for a good time. This is a sequel to Rival Schools United by Fate that was out on the PlayStation 1 previously, and I played that game to death. Like the Marvel vs. Capcom series, this is a team-based fighter. This time around you can choose 3 team members as opposed to Rival Schools 2. The characters in this game are what really makes it so much fun for me. From the crazy Batsu and his baseball bat to the demented Eureka and her magical violin attacks. The variety of the characters and weapons really make this game extremely diverse. All your usual Capcom button combos work, making this game quick to get into. Large, well-animated graphics and some zany music and sound effects managed to produce one of the best 3D fighters on the system. We have another Capcom beast in Marvel vs. Capcom, which was released in the arcades in 1998, and a Dreamcast port followed in 1999. If you know nothing about this series, then the name basically explains everything. A whole bunch of Marvel superhero characters and random Capcom characters have a smackdown versus style. The diversity of the characters is pretty epic, from Mega Man, Strider and Captain Commando to Hulk, Wolverine and Captain America. It's a bizarre motley crew. Overall there are 15 playable characters and 20 guest characters, which are selected at random and help with assists during the gameplay. And yes, I know this game has a much smaller roster of characters than its sequel, but I find the gameplay and fluidity of the combat to be much better for me anyway than the sequel. It's just my preferred game out of the two. As usual, excellent graphics and animation, really tight gameplay, fast and furious action, and some crazy bizarre music as usual make this a game that I have loved ever since dropping that first quarter in the arcade original. Be sure to also check out the excellent sequel as well.
Number 6.
Is Dead or Alive 2 by Tecmo, based on the 1999 arcade game and ported to the Dreamcast in 2000. Visually, this game absolutely blew my mind back in 2000. The graphics and animation were beyond good, and this game still looks every bit as impressive as it did back then. Not only that, but the arcade game ran off the Sega Naomi hardware, and the home port looks even better than the arcade in every respect. The original Dead or Alive on the Saturn was a blatant Virtua Fighter ripoff, a good one, but still a knockoff. But DOA 2 is a whole other beast unto itself. We now have 14 characters to choose from, with great additions like Helena and Leon and more. Plus, they got rid of the exploding ringouts and made each stage multi-tiered, so you can smash your opponent to different parts of the stage, and it all transitions so perfectly and smooth. The gameplay is top-notch, and timing your throws and combos becomes an art, coupled with an excellent soundtrack, which yes, I also own. make this an absolutely amazing fighting game that has barely aged at all in almost 20 years.
Number 5.
And at the number 5 spot we got Street Fighter Alpha 3, which again was released by Capcom in the arcades in 1998 and ported in 1999 to Sega's Dream Machine. First off, if you like the style of Street Fighter Alpha 1 and 2 in terms of gameplay and graphics, then you're gonna love this game, because they kept everything pretty much the same and just increased the character roster count, which is now insanely huge, also giving you the choice of fighting styles from previous games, and added what I think is the best mode in the series, that being the World Tour mode, which turns the game into a fighting RPG where you travel the world fighting and constantly upgrading your character Soul Calibur style. Lots of awesome remixed Street Fighter music, excellent animation and backdrops, awesome new characters, and perfectly tuned alpha gameplay make you want to play this game for hours on end. Highly recommended.
So I'm just going to stop this list for a second here so I can just talk a little bit about Capcom, the Japanese video game manufacturers that were formed in 1979. These guys are the gods of versus fighting games next to SNK. Their Dreamcast was blessed with so many of their classics. I try to make this list as varied as possible while still sticking to what I love the most. No matter what way you swing it, tons of them ended up on this list. And that is a good thing. It is not a bad thing. What I like about their games also on this system is that they were willing to take chances by releasing things like Techromancer, Star Gladiator 2, things that were like a little bit more different than their usual run-of-the-mill stuff. So basically what I'm trying to get at with this little rant is, if you're new to fighting games, collecting on the Sega Dreamcast, and you've run across a game and it has the Capcom logo on it, buy it. It's almost guaranteed 100% to be a freaking awesome game. And on that note, let's get back to the countdown.
This slot is for the best 3D fighter on the Dreamcast in my opinion, which is Soul Calibur, which was released in the arcades in 1998 and is a sequel to the equally cool Soul Edge that I also played on my PS1 to death and was released on the Dreamcast in 1999. And is undoubtedly the best launch game for any system still to this day. Just like Dead or Alive 2, when I first put this on in 1999, I was blown away at the amazing 3D graphics and fluidity of the gameplay that made the arcade version feel almost inferior. As a weapons-based versus game, it's top-notch, with all the characters being pretty well balanced in spite of the different sizes and lengths of the weapons. Sound effects and music really bring this game to a new level, and the music tracks still hum in my head every time I play this game. A must-own versus game on the system, and it takes the top spot for me on the 3D fighter roster. The game is also backwards compatible with the Xbox One, so it's an easy game to find and play even now.
Number 3
is Capcom vs SNK, a game by Capcom, but also featuring SNK characters, was released in the arcades in 2000, the same year as the Dreamcast version was released. This game was a fighting fan's dream back in the day. Just seeing Ken Masters face off against Terry Bogard was a thing of magic for us beat-em-up fans. The game has a good mix of SNK and Capcom characters. The 4-button SNK arcade style is used to balance everything between the franchises. You also get team and single combat as well as picking your styles of play. From the Capcom side, it's modeled after the Alpha series, and the SNK side is from the King of the Fighters series. It's pretty amazing how well they managed to mash both these different fighting styles together and make it feel so flawless. It's super impressive. The graphics are top notch, as is the sound effects and music. Again, the excellent sequel is also a must play, but I chose this one as my preferred version just due to the serious amount of time I put into it, especially in the versus mode.
Number 2
is the spectacular Garou Mark of the Wolves by SNK, based on their 1999 arcade game and ported to the Dreamcast in 2001. This game takes place 10 years after Geese Howard's death, the original Big Bad from the Fatal Fury series, with almost a completely new cast of characters compared to the usual SNK crew. This game is able to stand apart from any other game in the SNK stable. The graphics and animation in particular are some of the best work SNK's ever done, and the flow of the combat and controls are just perfect, making this game one of the best fighting games ever. The music and sound effects are epic as per SNK standard, and is some of their best stuff. Why don't I own the soundtrack to this? eBay, here I come. Track this gem down. The English version is rare and expensive, but one of the best Dreamcast 2D fighters, so it's really worth the credit card debt. take the plunge.
So before we go to my number one, I just want to go through 6 honorable mention games. These guys just didn't make the list and are well worth checking out as well. So first up I got Virtua Fighter 3. This is the Japanese version I got here. This is a very cool 3D fighting game. The reason it didn't make my top 10 is that I played Virtua Fighter 1 and 2 to death. By the time that this Dreamcast Virtua Fighter 3 came out, I felt the formula had worn a little bit thin at this point. It's a great fighting game though. It's a 3D fighting game. I would highly recommend it. If you've never played the originals, then this is probably going to be a much better game for you. I just personally had played the series to death at this point. This game doesn't offer too much new stuff. It has a couple extra characters and you got this like parry system, which does add a little bit of variety to the gameplay. It's still a really good AM2 fighting game though. Next is this crazy fun arcade action boxing game, Ready to Rumble Boxing by Midway. This game is really fun, crazy over the top characters, excellent gameplay, super fun to play. I really like it. You can also check out the PS2 sequel as well. You can find it for really cheap, it's easy to find, check it out. And next we have Fighting Vipers 2. This is a Japanese only release. This game is a sequel to obviously Fighting Vipers on the Sega Saturn. This is a pretty cool arcade conversion again by AM2, the guys that did Virtua Fighter 3. I think this is a really cool game. It isn't, in my opinion, it doesn't feel as good as the original. It's still damn good though. Whole bunch of weird extra characters in this game. Over the top action as per usual. If you're into this kind of 3D fighting game that is a little bit weirder than the norm, then this game is for you. Next we have Guilty Gear X. This is also another crazy 2D fighting game. It is, you know, it's pretty well established at this point. There were a whole bunch of sequels that came out on the PS2 and all other systems, and the series is still ongoing right now. This Dreamcast version comes with this cool little mini disc soundtrack as well, so you definitely want to check it out. This is the Japanese version we're looking at. Crazy over the top action. Arc Systems are the guys that created this, and they have a massive pedigree of excellent fighting games. Check it out. And next we have Lost Blade 2. This is by SNK. This game is often referred to as, you know, the Dreamcast version of Samurai Showdown. And if you play this game, it's got very similar game mechanics. It is a little bit more tactical. You have to time your attacks way more and be a little bit more precise. It's also got the crazy over-the-top action, but it's still it has a lot of strategy to it. So if you like the Samurai Showdown games, then you should definitely look out for Lost Blade 2. Next we got Fire Pro Wrestling D. Look how horrible that cover is. It looks like a modern game cover, you know, just rubbish. But if you look past that cover, you're gonna find a really cool 2D wrestling game made by Spark. Those guys make tons and tons and tons of awesome wrestling games. I'm by no means an expert in the Fire Pro Wrestling game series. Millions of crazy moves, just a damn fun game, especially in the 2-player mode.
And number 1 is
Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, which was released by Capcom in 1999 in the arcades, and we got the DC port in 2000. Third Strike refers to it being the third and final arcade revision to the game, adding extra characters and fine-tuning all of the gameplay. With 20 characters to choose from, including many new ones to the Street Fighter universe, you're in for a really good time. Some of those classic Street Fighter 2 minigames also return, including the car massacre sequence, which was always a personal favorite of mine. The gameplay is definitely different from any other Street Fighter game, but familiar enough not to scare too many people away. There are a lot of new techniques to master in Third Strike, and the more you play this game, the more rewarding it becomes. The graphics and animation are amongst Capcom's best work, and the music, which I initially hated, to be honest, grows on you pretty quickly, and so you start humming these tunes in your everyday life. I can't even count the amount of hours I put into the versus mode alone, never mind the excellent single player experience. If you're looking for a modern way to play this brilliant game, it's going to be included in the Street Fighter 30th Anniversary Collection on Xbox One, PS4, Steam and Switch, with full online play. But I'd still suggest getting this almost perfect fighting game on the home system that put this game on the map, the Sega Dreamcast.
So So what are my overall thoughts on the Sega Dreamcast as far as a versus fighting game system? I would say it's freaking fantastic, and if you like this genre of game, you definitely have to own it, just like a Sega Saturn. I mean, we didn't even mention half the games that are out for this system. Over here I've got Star Gladiator 2, WWF Royal Rumble. Over here I've got Mortal Kombat Gold, King of the Fighters Evolution. So many games to talk about, so little time. Thanks for joining me, Bastich B at 64K. If you enjoyed this Dreamcast versus game countdown, then you're probably also going to like my Sega Saturn one. Check that out on my playlist, my top 10 playlist, and you have all the videos there. If you can like and subscribe, that'll be greatly appreciated. And I'll see you next time. Cheers!